The stagecoach rattled to a halt in front of the Silver Spur Saloon in El Dorado, Kansas, and Victoria Bennett stepped down into the dusty street with nothing but a carpetbag, $17, and the clothes on her back, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life by answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride, only to discover upon arrival that her intended groom had died 3 days prior from a rattlesnake bite. The driver tipped his hat without much sympathy and drove off, leaving her standing alone in the September heat of 1878, watching the dust settle around her worn boots. Victoria was 22 years old, orphaned since she was 16, and had spent the last 6 years working in a Boston textile mill until the coughing fits from the cotton dust convinced her that a different life, any different life, had to be better than slowly suffocating in that gray building. She picked up her bag and walked toward what appeared to be a general store, her dark hair escaping from its pins after the long journey. The town was small but bustling, with cowboys driving cattle down the main street and the sound of a piano echoing from inside the saloon. El Dorado sat on the edge of cattle country, a place where men came to drink away their earnings and women were scarce enough to be noticed immediately. "You must be Miss Bennett," a woman's voice called from the doorway of the mercantile. She was perhaps 50, with graying hair and kind eyes. "I'm Martha Hayes. I run the store with my husband. Thomas Granger was supposed to meet you. He's dead," Victoria said flatly, too tired for pretense. "The stage driver told me." Martha's face fell. "Lord have mercy. I heard he took ill but didn't know it was that serious. Come inside, dear. You look about ready to collapse." The store was cooler, smelling of leather and tobacco and coffee beans. Martha poured water from a pitcher and Victoria drank gratefully. "I don't suppose there's a boarding house where I can stay while I figure out what to do next." "There's rooms above the saloon, but that's no place for a respectable woman." Martha wrung her hands. "We've got a spare room, but my husband's brother is staying with us right now, and it wouldn't be proper, unless—" She paused, thinking. "There's the old Campbell place. Been empty since they moved back east. It's not much, just a one-room cabin about a mile out of town, but the roof's sound." "I can't afford rent," Victoria admitted, her cheeks flushing. "I barely have enough for food." "You could work in the store," Martha offered quickly. "Lord knows I could use the help. It wouldn't pay much, but you'd earn your keep." It wasn't what Victoria had imagined when she left Boston, but it was better than nothing. "What kind of work?" "Minding the counter, helping customers, keeping inventory, nothing complicated." Martha smiled. "Though I should warn you, most of our customers are ranch hands and cowboys. They can be a rough bunch, but they're mostly harmless." Victoria nodded. She had dealt with difficult men in Boston, foremen who thought they could take liberties with the mill girls. She had learned to hold her ground. "When can I start?" "Tomorrow morning. Let me get you settled at the cabin first. My husband can drive you out there." The Campbell cabin was indeed small, barely larger than Victoria's room in the boarding house back in Boston. But it had a wood stove, a narrow bed with a corn husk mattress, a table and 2 chairs, and a window that looked out over empty prairie. After Martha's husband helped carry in some basic supplies and a few blankets, Victoria was alone. She sat on the bed and let herself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then she washed her face in the basin, unpacked her few belongings, and tried to figure out how to light the stove. She had never lived alone, never cooked a meal in her life. In Boston, she had eaten at the boarding house dining room. Before that, when her parents were alive, her mother had done all the cooking. By the time darkness fell, Victoria had managed to start a fire that smoked terribly and nearly set her skirt ablaze. She gave up on trying to cook the beans Martha had left and ate them cold from the can with a spoon, washing them down with water. Then she lay in bed, listening to coyotes howl in the distance, and wondered what on earth she was going to do. The next morning, she walked into town just after sunrise. The store didn't open until 8, so she wandered down the main street, looking at the other establishments. There was the saloon, a hotel, a livery stable, a blacksmith, a doctor's office, and a small white church at the end of the street. Men were already moving about, leading horses or loading wagons. "You're new," a voice said behind her. Victoria turned to find a man standing there, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water. He wore dusty clothes, a worn hat, and a gun belt, and he was younger than she expected, maybe 25 or 26. His brown hair was overlong, curling at his collar. "I arrived yesterday," she said carefully. "Heard about Tom Granger. Sorry for your trouble." He didn't sound particularly sorry, just matter of fact. "I'm Adam Zimmerman. I've got a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Victoria Bennett." "You planning to stay?" "For now. I'm working at the Mercantile." Adam nodded slowly, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Town could use more respectable women. Gets lonely out here." Before she could respond, Martha called from the store doorway. "Victoria." "Come on in, dear." "Morning, Adam." "Martha." Adam tipped his hat to both of them and walked toward the livery. Inside the store, Martha was already bustling about, opening shutters and sweeping the floor. "Don't mind Adam. He's a good man, but he's not much for conversation. Lost his whole family to cholera 5 years back and has been running that ranch by himself ever since. Works harder than any 3 men I know." Victoria helped sweep, while Martha explained the layout of the store and how to work the cash box. The work was straightforward enough, and by mid-morning Victoria was helping her first customer, an older cowboy who needed tobacco and was so shy he could barely meet her eyes. The day passed quickly. Men came and went, buying supplies, sometimes lingering to chat with Martha. They all looked at Victoria with curiosity, and a few tried to make conversation, but she kept her responses polite and brief. She had learned that encouraging attention usually led to complications. Adam Zimmerman came in around noon, buying flour and coffee and nails. He paid in cash and didn't try to make conversation, just nodded to her when she counted his change. But she caught him looking at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, and something about his gaze was different from the others. Less presumptuous, more thoughtful. That evening, Victoria walked back to the cabin with a small package of food Martha had helped her select. She was determined to learn to cook, even if it killed her. The stove, however, had other ideas. The fire either went out immediately or roared so hot she was afraid the whole cabin would catch. The bacon burned to charcoal. The eggs turned to rubber. The coffee tasted like boiled dirt. She was sitting on the front step, eating another meal of cold beans when she heard hoofbeats. Adam Zimmerman rode up on a gray horse, leading a pack horse behind him. "Saw your smoke," he said, dismounting. "Looked like you were trying to signal the next county." "I'm fine," Victoria said stiffly. "Didn't say you weren't." He tied the horses to the porch rail. "But I've got some extra firewood and figured you might need it. Nights are getting cold." He began unloading wood from the pack horse without waiting for permission, stacking it neatly beside the cabin. Victoria stood, brushing off her skirt. "Thank you, that's kind of you. Ranch is only a couple miles north, not out of my way." He finished with the wood and stood there awkwardly, holding his hat. "You know how to shoot?" "No. Might want to learn. Coyotes mostly leave people alone, but we've had some trouble with wolves this year." Victoria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "I don't have a gun." Adam walked to his horse and pulled a rifle from the saddle scabbard. "This was my sister's. She's been gone 5 years now, and it's just been sitting in my tack room. You can have it." "I can't accept that," Victoria protested. "Why not? It's not doing anyone any good gathering dust." He held it out to her. "I can show you how to use it if you want." Victoria took the rifle hesitantly. It was heavier than she expected, the wood smooth and well-maintained. "Why are you being nice to me?" Adam looked surprised by the question. "Why wouldn't I be? Most men want something. I'm not most men." He put his hat back on. "I'll come by Sunday afternoon if that's all right, show you how to load and shoot, and maybe look at that stove of yours. Shouldn't be smoking like that." Before she could argue, he mounted his horse and rode off into the gathering darkness, leaving Victoria standing on the porch with a rifle in her hands and a strange feeling in her chest. Sunday afternoon arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine. Victoria had spent the morning attempting to wash her clothes in a bucket and hanging them on a line she had strung between two trees. She had also tried and failed to bake bread, resulting in a lump of dough so hard she considered using it as a doorstop. Adam arrived at 2 o'clock, as promised. He looked at the clothesline and didn't comment on the fact that her underthings were hanging there for anyone to see, which she appreciated. Instead, he examined the stove while she stood nervously by the door. "There's your problem," he said, pointing to the flue. "This is stuck half closed. No wonder it's smoking." He worked at it for a few minutes until it moved freely. "Try it now." Victoria built a fire the way Martha had shown her, and this time the smoke went up the chimney instead of filling the room. "Oh, thank God," she breathed. Adam grinned. It transformed his face, making him look younger and less careworn. "Small victories. Now let's see about teaching you to shoot." They walked out into the open prairie behind the cabin. Adam showed her how to load the rifle, his hands patient and sure. He stood behind her to help her aim at a dead tree about 30 yards away, and Victoria was acutely aware of his warmth, his breath stirring her hair. "Breathe out slow and squeeze the trigger, don't jerk it," he instructed. The rifle kicked hard against her shoulder when she fired and the shot went wide, but Adam just nodded. "Good. Again." They practiced until her shoulder ached and she could hit the tree more often than not. Adam was a good teacher, calm and encouraging, never making her feel stupid for not knowing. "You'll get better with practice," he said as they walked back to the cabin. "Keep it loaded but pointed at the floor by your bed. If you need help, fire 3 shots in the air. Sound carries out here. Someone will come." Victoria set the rifle carefully inside the door. "Can I offer you something to drink? I have water and terrible coffee." Terrible coffee sounds good. They sat at the small table while the coffee boiled on the now properly functioning stove. Adam looked around the cabin, taking in the failed bread on the counter, the slightly scorched curtains by the stove, the general air of someone struggling to manage. "Martha mentioned you came out here to marry Tom Granger," he said carefully. "I did. I answered his advertisement." He seemed kind in his letters. He was kind, drank too much, but he was a good man. Adam accepted the cup of coffee she poured, sipped it, and managed not to grimace, though Victoria could tell it was as bad as she had warned. "You planning to go back east?" "No." The word came out more forcefully than she intended. "There's nothing for me there. I'll make a life here somehow." "You got any skills?" Besides working in a store, Victoria felt her cheeks burn. "I can read and write and do figures. I can operate factory machinery. I can hem a straight line if my life depends on it, though I hate every minute of it." She took a breath. "I can't cook, as you may have noticed. I can't sew beyond basic repairs. I can't garden or preserve food or any of the things a frontier woman is supposed to know. My mother died before she could teach me, and I spent the last 6 years working 14-hour days in a textile mill. She expected judgment or dismissal, or the kind of condescending amusement men often showed when women admitted to inadequacy. Instead, Adam nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I can't cook either," he said. "I've been living on burned bacon and hardtack for 5 years. Can't sew, can't darn socks, can't do a lot of things I probably should have learned. My mother tried to teach me before she died, but I was too busy being 17 and stupid to pay attention." Victoria stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we could help each other out." Adam turned his coffee cup in his hands, not meeting her eyes. "You need someone to teach you frontier skills. I need someone to teach me household things. And," he paused, "I need help at the ranch. Can't afford to pay hired hands right now, but I've got plenty of food and a house with more than one room. We could make an arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Victoria asked warily. "Practical one. You come work at the ranch, help me figure out how to run a household properly. I'll teach you to ride and shoot and everything else you need to know out here. You can have your own room, your own space. No expectations beyond learning and helping each other." It was possibly the strangest proposal Victoria had ever heard. People will talk. People always talk. "But Martha will vouch for your character, and I've lived here long enough that folks know I'm not the type to take advantage." He finally looked at her directly. "I'm not suggesting anything improper. Just two people trying to survive in a hard place, helping each other out. We can learn together." The word struck something deep in Victoria's chest. Learn together. No expectations, no judgment, just two people figuring things out side by side. It was more honest than any marriage proposal she might have received. "I'd need to keep working at the store a few days a week," she said slowly. "I don't want to be dependent." "Fair enough. Ranch is close enough you could ride in when Martha needs you, and if it doesn't work out, then you come back here or find another situation. No hard feelings either way." Adam stood, leaving the terrible coffee half-finished. "Think about it. I'll be in town Thursday for supplies. You can give me your answer then." After he left, Victoria sat at the table for a long time, turning the idea over in her mind. It was unconventional, possibly improper, definitely strange. But it was also the first thing since arriving in Kansas that made practical sense. She spent the next few days working at the store and thinking. Martha, when Victoria carefully broached the subject, was surprisingly supportive. "Adam's a good man," Martha said, organizing bolts of fabric. "Honest and hardworking. He's been struggling since his family died. That ranch is too much for one person, but he's too proud to admit it. And you need someone to show you the ropes out here." She smiled. "I think it could work if you're both sensible about it." Thursday came and Adam walked into the store at noon. Victoria was helping another customer and he waited patiently, looking at saddle equipment. When the customer left, he approached the counter. "Yes," Victoria said before he could ask. "I'll come to the ranch. But I want to be clear about the terms." "All right. I work for you, you teach me what I need to know. Separate rooms, separate lives outside of work. I keep my job here a few days a week. If either of us wants to end the arrangement, we have that right." "Agreed." Adam offered his hand and Victoria shook it. His grip was firm and calloused. "Can you be ready by Saturday? I'll bring a wagon for your things." "I don't have many things," Victoria said. "But yes." That Saturday, Victoria said goodbye to the little Campbell cabin and climbed onto the wagon seat beside Adam. The ride to his ranch took about 30 minutes, following a rutted trail through rolling prairie. The ranch house came into view gradually, a sturdy structure of weathered wood with a front porch and stone chimney. There was a barn, a chicken coop, a corral with several horses, and acres of fenced pasture dotted with cattle. "It's bigger than I expected," Victoria admitted. "My father built it to last, had plans for a big family." Adam's voice was neutral, but Victoria heard the grief underneath. "It's just been me for a while now." He showed her inside. The house had a main room with a fireplace, a kitchen area with a better stove than the cabin it possessed, and 3 bedrooms down a short hallway. The furniture was simple but well made, and everything was covered in a layer of dust that spoke of a man too busy working to maintain a home. "You can have the room at the end," Adam said, carrying her bag. "It was my sister's. I've been using my parents' room, and the third one is just storage now." The room was small but comfortable, with a real bed frame, a dresser, and curtains on the window. Victoria set her bag down and looked around, feeling something settle in her chest. It felt more like home than anywhere had in years. "Thank you," she said softly. Adam nodded. "I'll let you get settled. Supper's in about an hour. Fair warning, it's probably going to be awful." Supper was indeed awful. Adam burned the steak to leather and the potatoes to mush, and neither of them had any idea what to do about vegetables beyond boiling them into submission. They sat at the kitchen table, sawing at the meat and trying not to laugh at the absurdity of it all. "This is terrible," Victoria finally said. "Worst meal I've ever served another person," Adam agreed. "We have to figure this out or we'll both die of malnutrition. I've got some books somewhere. My mother's receipt books with recipes in them. Maybe we can start there." They found the books after supper, 3 leather-bound volumes with handwritten recipes and instructions. Victoria opened one and stared at the elegant script. To make a proper beef stew, begin with good stock and fresh vegetables properly cut. "What stock?" she asked. "I think it's broth." "Made from bones." They looked at each other and started laughing, the kind of helpless laughter that comes from exhaustion and absurdity and the recognition of shared inadequacy. It broke something open between them, some barrier of formality and uncertainty. "We're going to starve," Victoria gasped. "We're going to learn," Adam said firmly, wiping his eyes. "Tomorrow we'll start with something simple. Eggs. How hard can eggs be? Very hard, as it turned out." The next morning, they destroyed a dozen eggs between them before finally producing 2 that were edible, if rubbery. But they ate them with a sense of triumph, and Victoria felt something shift inside her. This strange arrangement might actually work. The days developed a rhythm. Adam woke before dawn to handle the morning ranch chores, feeding and watering the animals, checking fences, managing the cattle. Victoria helped where she could, learning to milk the cow, collect eggs, and feed the horses. Then they would come inside and attempt breakfast together, working through the recipes in the books, making mistakes and adjusting and trying again. Adam taught her to ride on a gentle mare named Daisy, leading her around the corral until she got the feel of it. Victoria taught herself to use the sewing machine she found in a trunk, repairing torn shirts and patching pants, though she still despised the work. In the afternoons, while Adam worked on ranch maintenance, Victoria practiced shooting, cleaned the house, or attempted to figure out the mysteries of bread making. Evenings they spent in the kitchen, cooking supper together, comparing what the receipt book said with what actually seemed to work. They talked while they worked, sharing stories of their lives before. Adam told her about growing up on the ranch, about his parents' dreams of building something lasting, about the horrible summer when cholera came through, and took his mother, father, and sister within days of each other, leaving him alone at 21 with a ranch to run and no idea how to grieve. Victoria told him about Boston, about the gray monotony of the mill, about losing her parents in a tenement fire and having nowhere to go except the factory, about the girls she had worked beside, some kind and some cruel, and how they had all coughed cotton dust and dreamed of escape, about answering Thomas Granger's advertisement in a moment of desperation and hope. "Do you regret coming here?" Adam asked one evening as they successfully produced a stew that was actually edible. Victoria considered the question seriously. No. Even with everything that went wrong, no. Boston was killing me slowly. Here I feel alive, even when I'm struggling. I'm glad you came, Adam said quietly. Even if the circumstances were terrible, I didn't realize how lonely I was until there was someone else in the house. Something warm bloomed in Victoria's chest, but she kept her voice light. You just like having someone to help with the cooking. That too, he agreed with a small smile. 2 weeks became a month, and then 6 weeks. Fall deepened into early winter, and Victoria learned to preserve food, smoking meat and putting up vegetables. Martha gave her lessons on Thursdays when Victoria worked at the store, teaching her the skills her mother never had the chance to pass on. Victoria taught Adam how to organize a pantry, how to mend properly, how to manage household accounts in a way that made sense. They were learning together, just as Adam had promised. But Victoria was also learning other things, things she hadn't anticipated. She learned that Adam sang under his breath while he worked, old songs his mother had taught him. She learned that he was gentle with the animals and had a gift for working with horses. She learned that he read poetry sometimes, in the evenings by the fire, and that he had a thoughtful way of looking at the world that surprised her. And she learned that she was falling in love with him. It crept up on her gradually, in small moments. The way he smiled when they successfully baked their first decent loaf of bread. The pride in his eyes when she rode out alone to check on cattle in the north pasture. The careful way he always made sure she was comfortable, never crowding her or making assumptions. The night he found her crying in the kitchen over a ruined cake and sat with her until she laughed instead, and then helped her make another one that turned out better. Victoria tried to ignore it, to push it down. Their arrangement was practical, not romantic. Adam had never suggested anything else, never crossed the careful boundaries they had established. He was kind and friendly and a good partner in this strange enterprise, but that didn't mean he felt anything more than appreciation for her help. Then came the night in mid-November when wolves attacked the chicken coop. Victoria woke to the sound of terrified birds and grabbed the rifle beside her bed. She ran outside in her nightgown and bare feet, firing into the air as Adam had taught her. 3 shots to signal danger. The wolves scattered and Adam came running from the barn where he had been checking on a sick cow. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, taking the rifle from her shaking hands. "No, the chickens. I heard them screaming and I just reacted." Adam checked the coop. 2 chickens were dead, but the rest were safe and the wolves were gone. He came back to find Victoria sitting on the porch steps, starting to shake with delayed fear and adrenaline. "You did good," he said, sitting beside her. "You probably saved half the flock. I didn't even think about it. I just grabbed the gun and ran. That's what you're supposed to do." Adam pulled off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders. "You're a natural frontierswoman, Victoria Bennett," she laughed shakily. "A frontierswoman who still burns half the food she cooks and can't sew a straight seam to save her life. You can shoot wolves in the dark without hesitation. That counts for more." He paused. "You're also barefoot. Come on, let's get you inside before you catch your death." But Victoria didn't move. She sat there wrapped in his coat, smelling of leather and horses and Adam himself, and the words came out before she could stop them. "I whispered I can't cook or sew." Adam looked at her, puzzled. "What, when I first came here? When I told you all the things I couldn't do, I felt like such a failure, like I wasn't fit to survive out here." She turned to face him. "And you said you couldn't either, that we would learn together." "We have been," Adam said carefully. "I know. And somewhere in all that learning, I fell in love with you." Victoria took a shaky breath. "I know that's not part of our arrangement. I know you offered me a practical solution, not a romantic one, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel it, Adam. Every time you smile at me across the kitchen, every time we figure out something new together, every time you look at me like I matter, I fall a little more. Adam was very still. Victoria, you don't have to say anything, she rushed on. I won't make this awkward. I can leave if you want me to, find another situation. I just needed you to know. Stop talking, Adam said, and then he kissed her. It was gentle and tentative, his hands cupping her face like she was something precious. Victoria made a small sound and kissed him back, pouring all the feelings she had been holding back into it. When they finally pulled apart, Adam was looking at her with wonder. I've loved you since the day you told me you couldn't cook, he said roughly. I've been in love with you for weeks, Victoria. I just didn't think I had the right to say anything. You came here running from one marriage arrangement. I didn't want to trap you in another. You're not trapping me, Victoria said fiercely. This is my choice. You're my choice. They kissed again, longer this time, and when Adam finally pulled back they were both breathing hard. We should probably go inside, he said. You're freezing. I don't care. I do. He stood and pulled her up gently. Come on. We can talk about this inside like civilized people. They went into the kitchen and Adam built up the fire while Victoria made coffee. The motions automatic now after weeks of practice. They sat at the table, hands intertwined, and talked until dawn broke over the prairie. Adam told her that he had fallen in love with her competence, her determination to learn, her refusal to give up even when things were hard. He loved her sharp intelligence and her dry sense of humor and the way she sang off-key while doing dishes. He had been trying to figure out how to court her properly, had been working up the courage to ask if she might consider changing their practical arrangement into something more permanent. Victoria told him that she loved his kindness and his patience, the way he never made her feel stupid for not knowing things. She loved his quiet strength and the vulnerability he showed when they talked in the evenings. She loved that he saw her as a partner, not a possession, and that he had given her space to become the person she needed to be. So what do we do now? Victoria asked as the sun came up, painting the kitchen golden. We keep learning together, Adam said simply, but as more than partners. As people building a life together. He squeezed her hand. Will you marry me, Victoria, properly because we love each other, not out of desperation or practicality? Yes, Victoria said, and felt like she was finally fully home. They were married 3 weeks later in the small white church at the end of El Dorado's Main Street. Martha stood as Victoria's witness and cried happy tears. The local ranchers and townspeople filled the pews, curious about the unusual courtship but largely approving. Adam wore a new suit that Victoria had helped him pick out, and Victoria wore a simple blue dress that Martha had helped her alter to fit properly. The Reverend kept the ceremony short and sweet. When Adam kissed his bride, Victoria felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was where she was meant to be, with this man who saw her as an equal and a partner. The wedding supper was held at the ranch, and to everyone's surprise and delight, the food was actually good. Victoria and Adam had spent days preparing, working through the receipt books and their hard-won experience. They served pot roast with vegetables, fresh bread, apple pie made from Martha's recipe. People praised the meal, and Victoria caught Adam's eye across the room and grinned. We did it, she mouthed. We did, he mouthed back. When everyone finally left and they were alone, Adam carried Victoria over the threshold of the bedroom they would now share. They were both nervous, neither of them experienced, but they had learned to communicate and work together on everything else. This was just one more thing to figure out. We'll learn together, Adam whispered against her hair, and Victoria laughed and pulled him down to her. The first year of marriage was not easy, but it was good. Winter came hard that year, and they were snowed in for days at a time, but they were together, and they were learning. Victoria got better at sewing, though she would never love it, and Adam got better at cooking, though he still burned things occasionally. They learned to work the ranch as a team, Victoria becoming skilled at handling the horses and helping with the cattle drives. In the spring, they expanded the ranch, buying more cattle with money they had saved carefully. Victoria kept the books and managed the household accounts, discovering she had a gift for numbers and planning. Adam built a new henhouse after the wolves returned, making it more secure. Together they planted a large garden, learning from Martha and the receipt books how to grow vegetables in the Kansas soil. They learned to fight, too, because that was part of marriage. Victoria had a temper when pushed, and Adam could be stubborn as a mule. But they also learned to apologize, to compromise, to talk through problems instead of letting them fester. Every argument they resolved made them stronger. In the summer, Victoria realized she was pregnant. She told Adam one evening after supper, unable to keep the news to herself any longer. His face lit up with such joy that Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes. "We're going to be parents," he said wonderingly. "Do you think we're ready?" "We couldn't cook or sew or run a household when we met," Victoria pointed out. "But we learned. We'll learn this too." "Together," Adam said, kissing her. Their son was born in March of 1880, a cold morning that turned warm by afternoon, as if the weather itself was celebrating. They named him Thomas, for the man whose death had inadvertently brought them together, and Michael for Adam's father. He was a healthy baby with his mother's dark hair and his father's creek-water eyes. Victoria had read every book on child-rearing she could get her hands on, and Adam had consulted with the other ranchers about fatherhood. But nothing really prepared them for the reality of a newborn. Those first weeks were exhausting and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "I don't know what I'm doing," Victoria confessed one night, rocking a crying Thomas while tears ran down her own face. "Neither do I," Adam said, taking the baby gently, "but we'll figure it out." And they did, through trial and error and asking for help and sheer determination. Martha was a godsend, coming out to the ranch regularly with advice and supplies and blessed patience. The other ranch wives welcomed Victoria into their circle, sharing tips and experiences. Thomas grew into a lively toddler, and the ranch continued to prosper. Adam hired 2 hands to help with the work, young men who lived in the bunkhouse and were respectful of Victoria. She taught them to read in the evenings, discovering she enjoyed teaching. When Thomas was 3, their daughter Sarah was born, with her father's brown hair and her mother's sharp intelligence. 2 years after that came another son, David, who was quieter than his siblings but had a gift with animals that rivaled his father's. The ranch grew along with the family. They added more land, built a larger barn, established a reputation for quality cattle. Victoria's careful management and Adam's hard work paid off year after year. They were never wealthy, but they were comfortable and secure in a way neither of them had imagined possible. El Dorado grew too. The railroad came through in 1885, bringing new opportunities and new people. The town became less rough, more settled, though it never lost its frontier character entirely. Martha and her husband retired, and Victoria bought the mercantile, running it with the help of a young woman from town while still managing the ranch accounts. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam and Victoria rode out to the spot where he had first taught her to shoot. They sat on the prairie grass, watching their children play in the distance under the supervision of one of the ranch hands. "You ever regret it?" Adam asked. Coming here, marrying me, this life we built. Victoria looked at him, this man who had offered her partnership instead of possession, who had seen her inadequacies and said they could learn together, who had loved her into becoming more than she ever thought possible. Never, she said. Not for a single moment. You gave me everything, Adam. A home, a family, a life I love. You gave me those things too, Adam said quietly. After my family died, I thought I would spend my life alone. I had resigned myself to it. And then you showed up, this woman from Boston who couldn't cook or shoot or ride, and you changed everything. We changed everything, Victoria corrected. Together. Together, Adam agreed and kissed her there in the prairie grass, with the wind blowing and the children laughing and the future stretching out bright before them. The years continued to pass in the way years do, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. There were hard winters and drought summers, cattle prices that fluctuated wildly, neighbors who struggled and sometimes failed. But the Zimmerman ranch endured, built on a foundation of partnership and love and the willingness to keep learning. Thomas grew into a serious young man with his father's work ethic and his mother's head for numbers. He went to agricultural college in Manhattan, Kansas, and came back with new ideas about cattle breeding and land management. Sarah became a teacher, opening a small school in El Dorado and marrying the town doctor's son. David stayed on the ranch, taking over more and more of the daily operations as Adam's back began to trouble him. Victoria's hair turned gray at the temples, and Adam developed lines around his eyes from squinting at the sun. They were in their 40s now, no longer young but not yet old, comfortable in their lives and in each other. They still cooked together most evenings, though both of them were accomplished now, the disasters of their early attempts a source of fond memories. "Remember when you set the curtains on fire trying to fry bacon?" Adam would say. "Remember when you put salt instead of sugar in the coffee?" Victoria would counter. They added a room onto the house for when the grandchildren came to visit, because Sarah had given them two so far and showed no signs of stopping. The room filled with toys and laughter, and Victoria discovered that being a grandmother suited her. She could spoil the children and send them home, and watch her own children navigate the challenges of parenthood with the same mixture of determination and confusion she and Adam had experienced. On their 20th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was full of noise and warmth, children running through the rooms, adults talking and laughing. Victoria stood in the kitchen, looking at the crowd, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Adam found her there and slipped an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm the luckiest woman alive," Victoria said simply. "I came to Kansas with nothing, expecting nothing, and look what I found." "We found each other," Adam said. "Everything else we built together." The celebration lasted into the evening with music and dancing and far too much food. When everyone finally left or went to bed, Victoria and Adam sat on the porch as they had done countless times before, watching the stars come out over the prairie. 20 years, Victoria said. "It feels like forever and no time at all." "I love you more now than the day we married," Adam said. "More than that night when you told me how you felt. I didn't think it was possible to love someone more, but it keeps growing." "I know," Victoria said softly. "I feel it too. Every year we're together, every challenge we face, every joy we share, it just gets bigger and deeper." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands intertwined, perfectly content. The night sounds of the prairie surrounded them, familiar and beloved. "You remember what you said that first day?" Victoria asked. "When I told you I couldn't cook or sew," I said. "Good, neither can I." "We'll learn together," Adam smiled. "Best thing I ever said." Best thing I ever heard, Victoria agreed. Changed my whole life. The years continued their steady march. Adam's back got worse, and eventually he had to hand over the heavy ranch work to David and the hired men, though he still went out every day to supervise and advise. Victoria sold the mercantile to focus on the ranch accounts and her growing brood of grandchildren. They were slower now, more careful, but no less devoted to each other and the life they had built. Thomas married a girl from town and started his own ranch on land Adam and Victoria helped him buy. Sarah had 4 children eventually, all of them bright and curious. David married a rancher's daughter from the next county over, and they gave Adam and Victoria 3 more grandchildren to dote on. The ranch itself became something of an institution in the area. People knew the Zimmerman place as a well-run operation where the cattle were healthy and the books were balanced, and the couple who ran it treated their workers fairly. Young men asked Adam for advice on ranching. Young women asked Victoria about managing a household and raising children. "You're the experts now," Martha said one day when she came to visit. She was old now, moving slowly but still sharp as ever. "Remember when you two didn't know how to boil water? We were pathetic," Victoria laughed. "You were determined," Martha corrected. "That's what mattered. You decided to learn, and you did." On their 30th anniversary, Victoria woke to find Adam already awake beside her, watching her with that same look of wonder he had worn on their wedding night. "What?" she asked, self-conscious. "Just thinking about how lucky I am," Adam said. 30 years with the woman I love. Not everyone gets that. We earned it," Victoria said. "We worked for this, Adam. We chose each other every day." "I'd choose you again," Adam said. "Every time without hesitation." They spent the day quietly, just the two of them. The children had wanted to plan a big celebration, but Victoria and Adam had asked for peace instead. They rode out to the north pasture, moving slowly on horses who were also getting older, and had a picnic lunch under the cottonwood trees that grew along the creek. "This is where I knew I loved you," Adam said, lying on the blanket with Victoria's head on his shoulder. "Right here, watching you learn to ride. You were so frustrated, but you wouldn't quit. And I thought, this is the woman I want beside me for the rest of my life." "I loved you before that," Victoria admitted, "but I didn't let myself believe it until later. I was afraid." "Of what?" "That it was too good to be true. That I would wake up and find out I had imagined the whole thing. That someone like you couldn't really love someone like me." Adam turned to face her, his expression serious. "Victoria Zimmerman, you are the strongest, smartest, most capable woman I've ever known. I loved you when you couldn't cook or sew or ride. I loved you when you were learning. I love you now when you can do all those things and 100 more. I love you for who you are, not what you can do." Victoria kissed him, tasting tears she hadn't known she was crying. "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes." "Don't be scared," Adam whispered. "We've got each other, we always will." They rode home as the sun was setting, the sky painted in shades of gold and pink and purple. The ranch spread out before them, solid and real, built by their hands and their love. Smoke rose from the chimney where David's wife was probably making supper. Cattle grazed in the pastures. Horses dozed in the corral. Everything peaceful, everything right. That night, lying in bed, Victoria thought about the frightened young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in El Dorado 32 years before, alone and desperate, and trying not to show it. She thought about the man who had offered her not romance but partnership, who had seen her as an equal when so many men would have seen her as less. She thought about everything they had built, learned, and become together. "Adam," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for choosing me, for seeing something in me worth investing in." Adam pulled her closer. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher who couldn't cook. Thank you for building this life with me." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, peaceful and content. The seasons turned. Years passed into decades. Adam and Victoria grew old together, their hair white, their faces lined with years of sun and laughter. The ranch passed to David, who ran it with the same care and partnership he had learned from his parents, working side by side with his wife just as Adam and Victoria had done. They moved into the smaller guest house on the property, leaving the main house to David's growing family. It suited them, this quieter life. They had earned their rest, but they still took their meals in the big house, surrounded by family, and they still sat on the porch every evening, watching the sun set over the prairie. On a summer evening in 1915, sitting in their rocking chairs on the guest house porch, Adam took Victoria's hand. 37 years, he said, doesn't seem long enough. It's been a lifetime, Victoria said. A good lifetime, the best, Adam agreed. No regrets. None, you. Only that I didn't meet you sooner, that we didn't have more time. Victoria squeezed his hand. They were both in their 70s now, feeling the weight of years. But they were together, still learning, still loving, still choosing each other every single day. We have right now, Victoria said. That's enough. And it was. They sat together as the stars came out, talking quietly about their life, their children and grandchildren, the memories they had made. When the moon rose over the prairie, they went inside together, hand in hand, ready for whatever time they had left. The years were kind to them in the end. They stayed healthy and active into their late 70s, still sharp-minded and engaged with the world. Adam passed first, one winter morning in his sleep, Victoria beside him. She held his hand and told him she loved him one last time, and felt his gentle squeeze in return before he slipped away. Victoria lived another 2 years, long enough to see all her grandchildren grown and several great-grandchildren born. She stayed in the guest house, surrounded by family, never quite able to shake the feeling that Adam had just stepped out for a moment and would be back soon. On a spring morning much like the one when Thomas had been born, Victoria passed peacefully in her sleep. She was 81 years old, and she died in the home she and Adam had built, surrounded by the legacy they had created together. At her funeral, which was held in the same small white church where she and Adam had married, Thomas stood to speak. He was in his 60s now, a grandfather himself, but his voice was strong and clear. "My parents taught us a lot of things," he said. "They taught us how to work hard, how to manage money, how to run a ranch and raise a family. But the most important thing they taught us was how to love. How to be partners, how to face challenges together instead of alone." He pulled out a piece of paper, worn and yellowed with age. "I found this in my mother's things. It's from a letter she wrote to my father early in their marriage. She wrote, 'You told me we would learn together, and we have. But what I didn't expect was that learning together would mean falling in love with you more each day. Thank you for seeing me not as I was, but as I could become. Thank you for growing with me instead of expecting me to change alone. Thank you for being my partner in every sense of the word.'" Thomas's voice cracked. That's the kind of love they had, the kind that grows and deepens and becomes more beautiful with time, the kind built on respect and partnership and choosing each other every single day. They couldn't cook when they met. They couldn't do a lot of things. But they learned together, and in learning, they built something that will last for generations. After the service, the whole family gathered at the ranch. David's children and grandchildren, Thomas's descendants, Sarah's sprawling brood. They filled the house that Adam had built and Victoria had turned into a home, sharing stories and memories and laughter along with tears. In the guest house, Sarah found her mother's journals. decades worth of daily entries. She sat on the porch where her parents had spent so many evenings and opened the first one, dated from that autumn of 1878 when everything had changed. Today, I learned to shoot a rifle. The first entry read in Victoria's neat handwriting. Adam Zimmerman taught me. He's patient and kind and doesn't make me feel stupid for not knowing things. I think I could learn to trust him. I think I could learn to build a life here in this wild place that terrified me just days ago. He said we would learn together. I'm starting to believe him. Sarah smiled through her tears and kept reading, following her parents' journey from tentative partnership to deep and abiding love. Every page showed growth, struggle, triumph, and always the commitment to face life together. The final entry, written just a week before Victoria's death, was short but powerful. Adam came to me in a dream last night. He looked young again, the way he did when we married. He said he was waiting for me, that we had more to learn together. I told him I was almost ready. I've had a good life, full of love and family and more blessings than I can count, but I'm ready to be with him again. Ready for the next adventure, whatever it may be. We'll learn it together just like we always have. Sarah closed the journal and looked out over the prairie, that vast expanse that had witnessed her parents' love story. The sun was setting, painting the sky in those same golds and pinks and purples her mother had loved. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied. The ranch went on, generation after generation, built on a foundation of partnership and love. On the porch railing, Sarah noticed something carved into the wood, letters worn smooth by decades of hands resting on it. She traced them with her finger. AZ and VZ, forever learning together. Her father must have carved it, Sarah realized. Probably early in the marriage, a promise and a hope carved into wood to make it permanent. And they had kept that promise every single day for 37 years of marriage and beyond. The family stayed at the ranch until sunset, then began the journey back to their own homes, their own lives. But they took with them the legacy Adam and Victoria had built. The lesson that love wasn't just about passion or romance, though there had been plenty of both. It was about partnership, about facing life's challenges together, about being willing to learn and grow and change alongside another person. It was about saying, I can't do this, and hearing, that's okay, neither can I. We'll learn together. Years turned into decades, and the Zimmerman ranch remained in the family, passed down through the generations. The story of Adam and Victoria became family legend, told to each new generation as an example of what love could be. Young couples would visit the ranch and hear the tale of the mail-order bride who arrived to find her intended dead, and the lonely rancher who offered her partnership instead of promises. They would hear about the burned bacon and the ruined bread and the terrible coffee. About learning to shoot wolves in the dark and ride horses across the prairie. About building a life from scratch, two people who knew nothing teaching themselves everything. About choosing each other every day in big ways and small. And they would see the legacy of that love in the thriving ranch, in the strong family ties, in the way the Zimmermans treated each other with respect and partnership. They would stand on the porch where Adam and Victoria had spent so many evenings and feel the weight of history, the presence of a love so strong it had shaped generations. The small white church in El Dorado still stood, though the town had grown considerably over the years. Inside, there was a stained glass window donated by the Zimmerman family, dedicated to Adam and Victoria. It showed a prairie sunrise, symbolizing new beginnings and the light they had brought into each other's lives. On the window frame was a small brass plaque with an inscription. Adam Zimmerman and Victoria Bennett Zimmerman. Married November 1878, He could not cook, she could not sew. Together they learned everything that mattered. A love built on partnership, grown through commitment, lasting beyond death. People would come to see the window, drawn by the story. They would ask the current generation of Zimmermans about the legend, and they would hear variations of the tale, each teller adding their own flourishes, but all agreeing on the essential truth. Two people who had nothing learned everything together, and in doing so, created something beautiful and lasting. The ranch itself became a testament to what love and partnership could build. It weathered droughts and floods, economic crashes and changing times. When other ranches failed, the Zimmerman place endured because each generation had learned the lessons Adam and Victoria taught. Work together. Respect each other. Be willing to learn. Choose love every day, even when it's hard. 100 years after that September day when Victoria stepped off the stagecoach in El Dorado, the ranch was still thriving. It had changed with the times, modernized and adapted, but the heart of it remained the same. The main house still stood, expanded and updated but built on Adam's original foundation. The barn had been rebuilt twice, but it sat on the same spot. The prairie stretched on forever, unchanged by human efforts, and on the porch of what had once been the guest house, now a museum maintained by the family, visitors could still see the faint carving on the railing. AZ and VZ, forever learning together. The words had nearly worn away, smoothed by generations of hands, weathered by decades of sun and rain and snow. But they were still there, a promise kept, a love remembered, a legacy that would never fade. Because true love, the kind built on mutual respect and partnership and the willingness to grow together, doesn't die with the people who create it. It echoes through generations, shaping families and inspiring others. It becomes more than just a story. It becomes a testament to what's possible when two people choose each other and refuse to give up. Adam and Victoria couldn't cook when they met. They couldn't do a lot of things, but they learned together, and in learning they built a love that would last forever. Not just in memory, but in the very bones of the ranch they created, in the values they passed down, in the example they set for everyone who came after. They learned together. They loved together. They built together. And their legacy, carved into wood and written on the prairie and passed down through generations, would endure as long as there were people who believed in the power of partnership, the strength of commitment, and the beautiful, endless possibility of learning together.